guys? Welcome to Vicious Whispers with Mark Tullius. Thank you so much for joining me. Today is episode 13, and we will be listening to Brightside Chapter 6. That'll come in a little bit. First, just want to let you know what I've been up to. Had a cool trip back east. Took the family to Rhode Island for Thanksgiving. I have family out there, and we got some training in. Actually, Jake got some training in at Triforce MMA, which is always awesome. Pete Jeffrey, who was in Unlocking the Cage, Triforce is one of the first gyms I actually checked out for Unlocking the Cage. The coaches, Pete and Keith Jeffrey, both interviewed, awesome guys. So whenever we're in town, that's where we stop to go train. And my son Jake, he did his class there with his buddy Luca, my friend Carl's son. And then I took my wife to go do a private with Matt Santos, who's an awesome black belt. I competed against Matt, and he busted my ribs, destroyed me. My very first competition back in everything, the first trip for Unlocking the Cage. And later that trip, I went back and interviewed Matt, became good friends. And he's a big fan of my writing, which is cool. So I will be sending him Ain't No Messiah a little bit later today. Those advanced copies came in, the paperbacks. So I think they look good. I'm excited about sending them out. But my wife had the private with Matt, and while I watched my son and watched the private, and it was cool to see how much she can get from someone else, a different philosophy, a different take on jiu-jitsu, someone who doesn't practice the 10th planet system. So it was really cool to see how much she got and what she really took away from that thing. And that was just one little private. So Matt's awesome. I appreciate his style. I've been able to train with him a little bit before. And next time, hopefully, my shoulder will be healthy. My back will be healthy enough to where I can go train. Starting to get back into that kind of thinking again. I know I'm always saying I'm done with jiu-jitsu, but I do miss it. I have, I think, 4 more weeks where I have to lay off any serious stuff for my shoulder because of the stem cells. So I'm trying to let that heal. Doing very limited yoga, physical therapy, that sort of thing. But as soon as I am better, I do want to start training again. One of the things I'm planning for this summer, the first week of summer, is taking the family up the coast. Probably going to rent a motorhome and then go all the way up the coast, hitting all the 10th planets and different jiu-jitsu gyms that I have friends at. So we can all train and hang out and see the whole, all of California, Washington, Oregon. I think it would be a lot of fun. So that is the goal. On the trip, I always do, I try to get writing done on trips. I used to love airplanes because it would just be silence, especially if I was flying by myself. Now that I have kids, it's a little bit different, but my son did really well. I got a lot of work done. And instead of working on instead of working on part 2 of Messiah, which is the bridge, or Beyond Brightside, I just focused on short stories. I've been digging into those. I managed to edit just about all the ones that I've been considering for possible inclusion in a collection, and now I'm inputting them. And I'm really getting close to being done. So originally I was only going to do that halfway through December, but I think I'm going to dedicate all December to the short stories, and I believe I should be finished with it by the end of the year, which is awesome. They'll still have to be edited, which won't take that long, and then I'm going to have early readers go through them and kind of let me know what they think, if they should all be in the same collection, if we need to break it up. And it's also, I'll have time to finish up. I'll probably put in out 3 new ones that I've already developed. I just need to hurry up and finish them. That's my goal, is to finish that. So it looks like next year, not only will I have Ain't No Messiah coming out, we'll have Try Not to Die and Brightside coming out, and then most likely a full collection by the end of the year, which is pretty fucking cool. When I got back from Rhode Island, I started doing, I've been doing a lot of busy work. I got all my books on Google Play, which is awesome, a whole nother site that I hadn't been taking advantage of. They just reopened their fiction to different authors. I was one of them. And so now all my books are on there. And another thing I did was I decided to get all my books on Amazon, paperback. I used to go with, and I still use Lightning Source, which is Ingram, as my publishing company. And I could do paperbacks through them. That's who I used to use before. but I wanted to try Amazon to see what the quality was like, if it makes a difference with how much it costs and all that stuff. And I'm pretty happy with how they came out. Yours, if you do order one off of Amazon, yours won't have that big bar on it saying not for resale. These are proofs, but here's Twisted Reunion. That one looks cool. That one was already out. I just fixed it up a little bit. Same thing with Brightside. Brightside was out through Lightning Source, but now it's made through Amazon. Brand new, Unlocking the Cage paperback. I'd only had it in hardcover, which is pretty pricey. I think this one is $13.99 for the paperback. And another one finally in paperback is 25 Perfect Days plus 5 more. Again, this was out on hardcover, which was expensive. Now I believe this is either $11.99 or $12.99. And then I was screwing around with this one, Somber Stroll. Super skinny, super little book. I think there's only 60 pages altogether. And it's like $4. But if anyone really wants to see this in print, although these stories are probably going to be in the full-length collection, which will be out by the end of next year, so no rush on getting that. It does feel good to have all that stuff done. Been getting a lot of busy shit done. I think I'm looking forward to starting the new year with just digging into the sequel, Beyond Brightside. Once I have that, I'll probably knock out that and a couple of the Try Not to Dies. And once that's finished, then I could go into the bridge. Another thing I'm planning for next year is to go to a lot of book festivals. Actually, maybe not a lot, but I want to hit the big ones. I already got my table for LA Times Festival of Books. I believe that's in April, USC. That one I've done a bunch. That one should be awesome. I'll always get to find a lot of new readers there. And then I'm going to see what the other big ones are. On the trip I mentioned that we might go up and down the coast. If we decide to do it the right week, we might actually swing down to Idaho, and there's a big book festival. I don't know how big it is. There's a book festival in Idaho, I think Boise. So it'd be kind of interesting to see how they take Ain't No Messiah over there. They might kick me out. Who knows? We'll see. Could be fun. But I've never been up there, and I want to check it out. And that's the whole reason I want to travel a little bit more. Not only to check out new areas, but then also to go to areas where I have friends that I made with Unlocking the Cage or from college or whatever else, and just see a little bit more of the country. Definitely in the mood to experience more things instead of just staying at home being a little hermit like usual. Life's a little too short for that, I think. But that's pretty much it on the writing end. Nothing too exciting. Why don't we get into Chapter 6 of Brightside? I'm sure you guys would rather listen to T. Quillen narrate that than me babble. So let's get into it. All right, here it is, Brightside, Chapter 6. Enjoy.
Chapter 6. Day 100, and I'm pouring bleach. I have no idea if it's covering the smell. I've been inhaling it too long, even with the shirt wrapped around my mouth. There's just so much blood, all the little hunks of flesh, on the ceiling, the floor. I just need this to buy some time in case they come looking. 2 air fresheners are on that table. I plug the first one in beside the dresser. I can't even glance at the closet when I pass by on the way to the bathroom. The closet. The fucking closet. I take a deep breath, clear out the bad thoughts. I get in the shower. Scrub so hard I think I'm going to peel off my skin like that stupid kid in church. Soon, everything is wiped. As good as it's going to get. My watch says I have 10 minutes to make it to work. The last day I'll ever set foot in that place. My shirt's hanging on the chair, blood-free. I put it on, ignore the cracks overhead, and step in front of the full-length mirror. Need to make sure I don't look like someone who just stepped out of a slaughterhouse. My shoes are beat up, but have enough tread to make it through the snow, up the hillside. My wrinkle-free khakis aren't slacks, but they're ironed. My pearl-white button-down with its crisp collar, the only thing making me feel like a salesman I used to be. The guy I'm going to have to be today to pull this off. I check the contents of my bag. Sunglasses, iPod, my oversized headphones. Necessities for surviving Brightside. I look back at the closet. If anyone comes in here, we're screwed. I've been running through the plan in my head, but every time it ends badly, So fucked up, it makes me think I should just grab the shotgun now. But I still have to come back. I head for the door. The knob is cold. Nothing compared to the little world on the other side, but I'm going to face it. Day 100. Ready or not. My beat-up shoes crunch 2 pieces of broken gifts on the floor. So many pieces I had to puzzle together. What Dad really wanted. My chance to get out. To think it all started with that fucking fish. I don't remember how long I sat on my bed with Dad's gift on day 44, fingering the re-taped paper, that sad little bow mashed down and frayed. He'd never wrapped anything when I was a kid, just handed me the Rite Aid bag, the contents visible through the cheap white plastic. I'd been in Brightside a month and a half, and my parents hadn't written, hadn't called, so seeing this gift filled me with dread. My father loved to lecture, so I pictured some hand-carved sign that read, "Told you so." Finally, I unwrapped it, tore off the paper. That stupid fish staring at me, head twisted to the left, that tiny red button telling me to press it. I did, and Billy Bass sang, "Take Me to the River," tail flapping, mouth opening and closing to Al Green's words. My father wasn't known for making practical jokes. I'd only seen him laugh a few times as a kid. He'd never bought me anything fun to play with, unless it had to do with hunting or fishing. But even then, he lectured me on responsibility and sucked all the fun right out of it. We went on a few fishing trips to the Black River in Ohio, father and son weekends because Mom said it'd be good for us. I knew it was just so she could have men sleep over. I was 7 the first time I saw a real fish. Dad dressed the part, in full-length waders and a black vest with pockets so he could stay in the middle of the river all day. I wished he would have. Dad had just reeled in a fish the size of my forearm, brought it to the bank. He pointed at the flopping flounder. "See that, Joe? Look at it." "What's it doing?" Dad took off his hat to wipe his forehead. He knelt down beside me and put his hand on my shoulder. "It's finale." Even though Dad never got this close, all I could think about was the fish. I knew fish couldn't talk like Billy Bass, but this one was screaming, trying to snap its spine. I told Dad, "Put it back." "No." "Put it back in the water." The fish flailed, and Dad caught it in midair. He put its wriggling belly a few inches from my face. "You see that hook? Look, son. I want you to see this." "I don't want to." "Open your eyes," Dad said. "God damn it, look!" Dad turned my chin back to the fish, down its mouth. Pink goo pushing around both sides of its shiny red metal. It was impossible to see anything else. See how it went right through? Even if I could free the hook, I'd tear up its insides getting it out. I can't put this guy back. The fish kept fighting. Dad's hand squeezing so tight the eyes were going to pop. The part of the hook poking out wasn't that big. I figured the fish would be okay if it got back in the water. I said, "Try it." "No." He set the slowing fish against the ground. His other hand reached to his side, brought out the knife I'd never seen unfolded. "It's over." The knife ripped through the air, ripped through the fish. Its severed head tilted onto its side. One big eye staring, accusing, saying, "Remember this." Dad wiped the blade on the grass, acted like it was no big deal. Then he got up, walked back into the river, sang some stupid song about roly-poly fish heads. Maybe he did have some twisted sense of humor after all. Billy Bass's song ended on my lap. The batteries almost drained. There were 2 more giant D-cell batteries inside the package, but I saw no reason to continue Dad's joke. Billy Bass would sit in my closet until day 74, when everything finally made sense. I didn't know my father was trying to help. I was in 4th grade playing football on the field behind the school. Corey and Gilbert versus Stephen and me. They were bigger, faster, stronger. They won every time. I never cheated because at least they let us play, and it stopped them from picking on us during class. They'd beat us up and taunt us on the field, but basically leave us alone afterwards. This day, we were tied. It was their ball, 4th down, 5 feet from the goal line that ran between the 2 baseball backstops. I stayed away from their huddle, but I had a good idea what they were going to run. Something tricky. At that point, I was prepared for the loss. Corey's hooting and hollering, that stupid dance he did. Plus it was hot and I was all sweaty. They broke the huddle. Corey went to the ball, Gilbert all the way to the left. The bell rang and Stephen started walking for the blacktop, acting brave in my old Star Wars shirt I'd given him because he kept staring at it when he came over. Then Stephen actually talked smack. "Guess you guys don't win this time, Corey." Corey held out his arm, kept Stephen back without touching him. "No way, Hong Kong. One more play." Stephen pointed at the classroom, way on the other side of the school. "The bell rang." Corey kept his arm out. "No shit, Sherlock." "Come on, Corey, let him go," I said. "It's either a tie or we'll finish next week." "Stop being such a muff, Joe," Corey said. He walked to the line of scrimmage and backed Stephen up behind the ball. Gilbert, in his Columbus Conquerors t-shirt and matching shorts, got in the special stance he'd learned at camp. "Yeah, Mr. Mosley's always late." The blacktop was covered with kids, only a teacher or two. "We still got time," I said. "Come on, Stephen, it'll be quick." Stephen pulled at his baggy shirt, the Luke Skywalker iron-on so faded it almost wasn't there. It sounded like he might cry, something a 4th grader should never do. "I have to change." "Change later, Chinker-dinker." Corey squatted down and grabbed the ball. "Last play." Stephen finally shut up, his thoughts shouting in my head. "Fucking pecker! If you get near me, I'm going to kick you in the balls!" Make it so Corey could never make fun of him again. But I knew if Stephen tried it, he'd miss. He was the most uncoordinated kid in class, his belly round and jiggly because his mom made him pork dumpling nearly every night. I knew Corey could beat the piss out of him. Corey squished up his face so his eyes were almost closed. "Oh, me so scared." Stephen made a noise, almost sounded like a growl. Corey laughed, and I knew what Stephen was going to do. That's what made me do it. What made me become the cheat Dad always wanted me not to. I asked Gilbert, "What you running?" Gilbert smiled, thought there was no way I'd be ready for the flea flicker. Corey hut-hut-hutted and hiked the ball. Gilbert pretended to run forward, put on his best fake-out face. He was supposed to come back behind the line, catch the lateral, and throw it back to Corey. So clear. So goddamn easy. I jumped him in front of the pass and picked it off, and hauled ass for the blacktop. Corey shouted a super loud, "Fuck!" The race was on. The other goal line was between the swings and the monkey bars, still half a field away. Gilbert and Corey were both faster than me, but I had a lead, pumping my arms as fast as I could. I didn't need to look back to know Gilbert was just a few feet away, thinking about diving for my legs. Corey was next to him, wanting to teach me no one beat him, especially some little white pussy. I zigged to the left. Gilbert dropped, face planted. I zagged, and Corey tripped over Gilbert. The goal line was less than 20 feet away. Corey stumbling to grab my shirt. I spun, Corey fell, and I backpedaled into the end zone. That spike was the biggest fuck you I'd ever delivered. I slammed it hard and yelled, "Touchdown!" loud enough that even the kids at home could hear. Corey popped off the grass and ran over. No way, doesn't count. Steven slapped me a high five. Yeah, it does, he said. We win. He did this ridiculous robot dance, the one he'd been perfecting at home in front of the mirror. He looked like a spaz, but I'd never seen him happier. The kids were filing into the school. I told Steven we needed to go. He finally stopped dancing, bent over to pick up his notepad and school clothes. Corey charged and pushed him to his knees. Steven got up and brushed off the grass, saw the stain he wouldn't be able to explain to his parents. Oh, what the hell, Corey? Why'd you push him? I said. 'Cause he's a crybaby and a cheater. You both are. The touchdown didn't count. It counted, and we won. End of story, I told Steven. Come on. Steven held up his perfectly folded shirt that almost matched his cheeks. I have to change. What's wrong? Corey asked. Hong Kong don't want to show off his chi-chis? None of us liked the thought of changing in public, but the thought crippled Steven, left him standing there holding the shirt, waiting to be told what to do. Come on, dude. Everybody's already in line, I said. The second bell's going to ring any second. I'll stand right here. No one's even looking. Gilbert pointed at the principal's office, way at the other end of school. There's Mosley. Mr. Mosley was talking to Miss Shannon. She was leaning against the wall, their bodies pretty close. They could have been talking about anything, but it was probably about his divorce, why he didn't get one yet. I heard disgusting things when they stared at each other in the cafeteria. Hurry up, Steven, I said. I don't want to be late. Corey kept pushing Steven, who was losing it. He shrieked. Go away, Corey! I've got all day. Bitch Hudson gave me detention this morning. What's Mosley going to do? Corey showed how white his teeth were with a giant smile. Come on, Hong Kong. Let me see those titties. Steven silently whispered my name to help. We didn't have many options. I told him to just change. Mosley saying goodbye. Steven slipped the shirt off his head and started to put on his nice one, but Corey ran past me and grabbed the hold of each shirt and ripped them free. I turned, but Corey was already running, Steven looking after him, his toothpick arms flying back and forth. Corey ran around the jungle gym, jumped over the sand pit, hit the blacktop full stride. He was an athlete and an asshole. Steven gave up, kicked at the sand, arms folded over his chest. It was probably for the best. I don't know what he could have done if he'd caught Corey. When Corey got halfway to the classroom, he glanced over his shoulder, gave a big smile. Then he had to go and raise both his hands, the shirts flying behind him, making sure everyone saw him coming. The other fourth graders were already in two lines leading to the classroom. Corey ran through the middle of them and yelled, "Here come the cheaters!" Everyone turned to see who he was talking about. Corey stood at the front of the class. You gonna just stand there? He wasn't talking to Steven. His brown eyes were on me. Or are you gonna come help your rice jammer butt buddy? It was hard to talk with everyone watching, but I managed. Give him back his stuff. Corey held up the Star Wars shirt. Hong Kong even wears your clothes. What else you two doing? The kids laughed, mostly the guys. But Gina, the girl I had a crush on, was right there, a few feet away at the end of the line. She didn't think it was funny. She thought Corey was a jerk. I said, You mean besides beating you at football? A bunch of people oohed. Someone said Corey got burned. Corey got mad and made his nostrils get even bigger. If we played tackle, you pussies would never score. Guess we'll never know. Can he have his shirt now? Corey acted like he didn't hear me and wrapped the Star Wars shirt around his fist. Tell everyone why you won't play tackle. Is it because your mommy and daddy won't let you play, or because you're chicken shit? From behind, the place he always seemed to be, Stephen said, "Forget it, Joe. Mr. Mosley will be here in a minute." Corey came closer. The lines moved, formed into a circle. Corey pounded his shirt hand into his palm. "Shut up, you stupid chink. Go run home to your mama, son." I was glad I couldn't see Stephen's face turn red, his eyes tear up. The others could, though, and almost all of them thought it was funny. But not Gina. She told Corey to shut up. Corey smiled. He thought no one was going to say anything. "Aw, does a girl have to fight your battles?" Everything got kind of blurry, except Corey and his big fucking mouth. Something had to be said. No one else was going to say it. So I did. At least he has a mom. Corey started to shake. His eyes got all big. "Your mom's a whore!" Spit flew off his lips. "And you're a little dick honky just like your dad." It was the first punch I ever threw. He never saw it coming. Connected full on. Knocked Corey's head back. He tried to swing, but couldn't land anything. Didn't look like such a great athlete with me rushing him into the circle, throwing him into the wall. Corey's eyes were closed when his head smacked against the brick. His lips split on the next punch, shot blood everywhere. The third punch dropped him hard. Kids screamed for me to stop. A couple said, "Fuck him up!" I obliged. I got on top of Corey's chest and kept punching his face. Made it so he wouldn't ever say anything about anyone's mom ever again. Then I grabbed his head and slammed it into the ground so he wouldn't even think about it. A giant hand flung me off, and I smacked into the wall. Mr. Mosley got on his knees, wiped the blood off Corey's face. He told Gina to get the nurse. My father was called. I was suspended. We drove home in silence. I'd rarely heard his thoughts. He'd always kept his distance. Seemed to move when I got into range. I was afraid to listen in the car. I already knew he was pissed. He told Mr. Mosley the suspension wasn't nearly as bad as what I had coming at home. As we passed by the high school's football field, I thought back to our game. Spiking the ball, Stephen's robot dance. Dad was so pissed he could barely speak. "I told you never to cheat." "What?" "I told you never to cheat." I hadn't mentioned the game to Mr. Mosley or my dad. So I'm going to make this real goddamn clear. If you ever pull that shit again at school, with your friends, with anyone... I could hear his guilty thoughts, the ones about whipping me with his belt. "Dad?" "I'm sorry. I should have told you." And right there, I learned I wasn't alone. Dad pulled the car over and told me the truth. Some of it was out loud. The rest of it just between us. He said Mom didn't need to know. She knew enough about him, but not about me. It'd be too much to handle. I had to keep it in check, had to learn to control myself, hide what I could do to keep us safe. They'd split us up, send me to live in an orphanage. My father would lose his job, the one he hated, but it put food on the table, a roof over our heads. I asked if there were others. He told me there were, but that we should never associate, never seek them out. The world was already starting to learn the truth. Soon they'd start coming for us. Brightside didn't exist yet, but there'd be repercussions. Dad said people were being institutionalized, thrown in nut houses, like my grandmother. I thought she lived in Florida, I said. She does, just not in a condo. My entire life, I thought my dad hated me. Turns out he was just scared, trying to protect me. After that, things changed. We went on more trips. He helped me be a better son, giving me silent instructions to help Mom in the kitchen with the dishes. He showed me how to hunt, taught me how to field strip a shotgun, bolt always rounded side up, center the hook in the receiver, the slide should drop right in. Dad learned all this in the war. He said it was the last time he'd abused his ability. It saved his life, but got his platoon killed. The shotgun was my grandfather's, a Mossberg 12-gauge, American metal. Dad took me to the range, let me fire it. The kick nearly ripped off my shoulder. I never wanted to shoot it again. Dad said, "Never let fear take control." He loved to lecture. I was young enough to listen, just couldn't put it into action. I didn't tell anyone what I could do, but I couldn't stop hearing others' thoughts. I'd hear answers for tests. When I discovered Lacey liked me in the 7th grade, I got my first kiss. I couldn't turn off the thoughts no matter how many times Dad told me I could. He said I just had to focus my mind. We got into fights. I ran away twice. Came back only to fight some more. When I moved out for good at 17, Dad begged me to reconsider. He didn't want to be left alone with Mom. He grew paranoid, refused to leave the house. He'd call me at odd hours once he'd heard about Brightside. He'd send me articles about the town, but always hidden on the back of an article about something else, fishing, a new vodka, the risks of smoking. He didn't want to draw suspicions, said I couldn't either. I didn't want to hear it. I told him I was smart. I wasn't going to get caught. But that was before Saul, before BMW, before Michelle. Dad's Brightside gifts didn't stop with Billy Bass. He sent a fishing pole, more D-cell batteries. He sent a tuning fork, even though I'd never played an instrument. His letter said I should learn new hobbies. He wrote he'd been learning to kayak. None of it made sense. I worried he'd developed dementia. It explained the last few years, the paranoia. There were studies linking telepathy to brain damage. I shoved all the gifts in the closet. Some I didn't even unwrap. I didn't want to think about him. That if I just listened to his advice, I'd be in the real world, not staring at Rachel's empty desk every day or hiding from Crystal in the square. The darkness was closing in. I didn't want to leave my room. I just wanted to stay in bed, stare at nothing. But I didn't have a choice. Isolation got you sent to the cabin. So I looked for reasons to go outside and act like everything was fine. I took walks, hung out with Danny, brought him some new comic books. He reminded me of Stephen. But as bad as it was for Stephen and me as kids, it was nothing compared to how Danny had it. The out-loud taunts hurt, but not nearly as much as the silent ones. The kind even bullies kept to themselves. Danny had heard them all, but somehow he was still happy. I envied Danny and tried to learn from him. I even stopped feeling sorry for myself about Rachel, Michelle, Crystal. But I still felt awful for how things ended with Stephen. By 8th grade, we'd stopped hanging out, rarely spoke. I'd been listening to other people's thoughts, started hanging out with the jocks, the pretty girls. I knew what they wanted to hear, said all the right things to make them think I was cool. Stephen wasn't, never would be. So I cut him off. Then he got sick, real sick. His parents pulled him out of school. I knew I should visit, but I couldn't face him. Dad found out, heard me thinking one night at dinner when Mom asked me how Stephen was doing. Dad drove me to Stephen's house to make me apologize. He sat in the car while everything was yelling at me to run. I breathed in, breathed out, told myself I'd be okay. I didn't use the doorbell because I didn't want to wake Stephen's parents if they were sleeping. I'd asked Dad to just let me do this over the phone, but he refused. Said I needed to look Stephen in the face. Hear what Stephen was really feeling. I knocked on the door, prayed his parents would tell me to go home. I didn't know his parents well, even though I'd been over there 100 times. They kept to themselves and never said a lot. Hardly ever more than hello. Stephen said they didn't really speak English, but I knew he just didn't want them doing it around me, embarrassed of how they sounded. Stephen's mom opened the door, her straight black hair now frosted gray, her eyes black holes above pursed lips. I bowed my head to show respect. "Hello, Mrs. Chang. Can I see Hong?" Calling Stephen by his real name reminded me why I'd cut him off in the first place. Mrs. Chang gave me the slightest nod and stepped to the side, revealing the path of clear plastic protecting the bright white carpet. I slipped off my shoes and set them next to the other two pairs. His mom was waiting, not saying a word, glad I was there. The plastic crinkled under my feet, the sweet smell of rice mixed with incense. I couldn't turn back, so I went down the hall. Stephen's room was the last one on the left. The room was closed, nothing on it, his signs gone. Hong's room. Nice and neat block letters, the most rebellious thing I'd ever convinced him to do. No way he'd ever write Stephen. I opened his door. His room used to be blue. Now it was brilliant white, every single inch. No more Star Wars posters. No superhero cardboard cutouts below them. All of it was gone. Stephen was done with childhood. Everything else was just as white. The carpet, the walls, the ceiling, the candles in the corners. Everything gone except the giant silk screen that hung in front of the window, the soft white fabric with its border so green, and a blue river and a big white bird floating down the middle of it. I stepped forward, Stephen whiter than he'd ever been, so pale, so weak, so small. Stephen's head was propped 3 pillows high. All his hair was gone. All that was left was his skull and some skin, his thin slits for eyes staring straight ahead at the picture. He was thinking about death and what it would be like. Stephen winced and let out a long sigh that sounded painful to say. Keeping his hand under the sheet, he grabbed hold of his hip. His bones hurt. All the time, even with meds. I stepped closer so my legs touched the bed. Seeing him like this made it hard to think. I didn't know if I should call him by his real name. I cleared my throat so I wouldn't scare him, and I said, "Hey, man." Stephen slowly turned his head and blinked twice. His thoughts trying to figure out how he felt about me. If he hated me for making fun of him at school because he still played Dungeons and Dragons, or if he was too embarrassed to be seen like this, bald, deteriorating, naked under the sheet. Or if he was just glad someone had finally cared enough to come. I had no idea what to do. No one had ever told me what to say to someone dying. Someone who had less than 10 days, 2 weeks at the most, according to our teacher, Mrs. Kaufman. She made us make this giant card. We all signed our names, some words of encouragement. I only wrote, "Feel better." I nodded at the picture covering the window. "Cool goose." Stephen spoke so low I had to lean forward. "Swan," he said. "That's what Hong means." I'd never thought his name actually translated into anything. That's what it means? "Not gorilla," Stephen said through a cough, and then smiled. For a second, it was like old times. Then his smile twisted into a grimace, because he realized that even the shittiest, loneliest, most humiliating times would be better than no times at all. He'd sit through Corey's little dance all day, every day, if it meant getting better. I pointed at the swan. I'll take it down. You want me to? They know best. He paused to catch his breath. They say I'm just a child. I didn't know what to say. So my lips stayed still. I thought, I'm so sorry. Stephen's eyes grew wide. I'd never spoken to anyone in thought. He looked frightened, and I took off running, all the way to the car. Dad knew what I'd done, but this time he didn't lecture. 2 days later, Stephen was gone, taking my secret to the grave.
All right, we are back. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that chapter. A little look into Joe's childhood. I do that a lot. In Messiah, I do that a lot too. I just think childhood is just such a vulnerable place, a place where we are shaped. I forget what the actual odds are, but I think 95% of our beliefs are formed by the time we're 5 or 6. I think about that all the time when my son is around, or my daughter, and just how much the things that we tell them are becoming permanent in their belief system, and what we're exposing them to, whether it be movies or teachers, fucking Sunday school, anything like that. It's like they are gonna believe those things for a very long time, unless I tell them different. I'm like, nope, that's all bullshit, kids. So the fish scene, yeah, it made me think. I think I had a hard time with fishing when I was little. I didn't do a lot of it with my family, but I think my granddad used to like to take us, which I don't remember too much. But I used to go with my friend Rich all the time. But I never enjoyed de-hooking the fish, or whatever the fuck it's called, or cleaning them or any of that. I was always a little squeamish. Didn't like the sight of blood. So I think that's where that scene came from. The other scene, the football scene, that definitely came from my childhood, because we would play football. There was 4 of us, and we would play football just about every day. And I think we would, like, for certain summers or school seasons, we would just continue to score every day. We would keep track of it after every recess, play every recess, every lunch. And it was pretty competitive. And I think I was on the shittier team, probably. So yeah, that scene was about that. And the fight scene, made me think about the fights I had in school. I was a quiet kid, but I definitely had some anger issues. I was littler too, but there were a couple times where I got into fights. And one time the teacher actually told my mom that she was glad that I got into a fight, that I stood up for myself, that I did it. So maybe that's why I went into fighting. My teacher was so proud of me. But yeah. And just that feeling too of being in this scene, the fight takes place pretty quickly, but it's because of the other kids that are around egging it on. I remember one of the big fights I got into in like 4th grade. It happened after lunch. There was got into an argument with another friend, who was like a good friend of mine. Then one of us said something, another one said something, then we agreed to fight, and then right after school, the entire school went out there to the field to watch us fight, circled around us. I was like, there's no backing out at that point. I never had the ability to stand up like that. So yeah, and it was a good fight. I actually won that one until my teacher came and pulled me off. So that kind of sucked. But yeah, after the fight, I remember going home crying. I knew I was going to be in so much trouble. I was a little bitch. But luckily, I didn't get into too many fights. I think there were a couple in elementary school, and then I pretty much stayed out of fights until, besides like ones that would pop off in football, it wasn't until after high school when I started bouncing, I got into a lot of physical altercations. And then a couple street fights I had were because of coming to the aid of either a friend or my brother. One time it was because a girl was getting beat. So I usually had a reason. It's not like I was going to ever go out and just want to hurt somebody. And I never really believed in myself that much, my fighting ability. I mean, I had some skills, but I never thought I was that great. So I think I was always hesitant. And I was in lots of situations where there are always guns, especially when I was bouncing. Several times where places I was bouncing at got shot at and stuff like that. So, yeah, I realized that fighting probably wasn't the smartest thing to be doing. What else happens in this chapter? Oh, Joe finds out his dad's a telepath. So, I don't know whether or not you saw that coming, but it was a surprise for Joe. So, we'll see what happens because of that. Alright, guys, I think I'm going to keep today short. I got a lot of shit to do. Got a lot of writing to get done. And this is my writing time. Kids are at school. I have stuff to do. Let's see, the next short story I'm working on is developing friendship. And what's crazy with these stories, I wrote that one 16 years ago. So I was 30, and my writing fucking sucked. Not to say it's great now, but it's improved a lot. Each of these stories I'm cutting so much. So it's cool. It's just, I've gotten a lot better. That makes me feel good. So instead of being upset about how terrible these are, like, oh, here's my chance to fix them up. Most of them, I think the story idea is good. It's just how I pulled it off. And so, yeah, I think they're going to be much better. Hopefully it'll be a pretty good collection. But you're going to have to wait for that. So, too bad. All right, guys. Well, you have a wonderful weekend. Thank you so much for listening. And come back next week for Chapter 7 of Brightside. All right. Later.